Inside racing on the way to one of the most impressive motor museums in the world. Welcome to the National Motor Museum. Welcome to Beaulieu. To visit this picturesque village, you have to travel to the south of England. Not far from Southampton lies New Forest National Park. Woods, moors and lakes, and yet, even as you approach, you get the impression that everything here revolves around horsepower.
My name is Lord Montague of Beaulieu, and I welcome you all to the National Motor Museum.
Typically British, Beaulieu, a place full of tradition and history. In the early 12th century, a monastery was founded here, Beaulieu Abbey. Its great gatehouse later evolved into the Palace House, the Montague family seat. Whenever the family crest is flying here, Lord Edward Montague of Beaulieu is at home. The 83-year-old maintains his father John's legacy. He was a racing driver of the very earliest era.
The reason that the museum came into being here was that my father was a great pioneer of motoring, not only as a motorist, but also in politics, in journalism, and he was in the early days of motoring very active, but he was very well known for being a champion.
In the early days of motor racing, John Montague took part in numerous races, including in 1899, the Paris-Ostend race, and in 1900, the 1,000-mile trial all around Britain. From the same blood and with the same motoring passion, son Edward, here taking a spin with Margaret Thatcher, and here with the young Prince Charles. In 1952, the then still young lord put 3 of his father's cars on show. This small exhibition became the basis for a constantly growing collection. From the days when horse-drawn carriages still had right-of-way to the raging machines of daredevil racing drivers. Garages, huts, open-air shows, the exhibition area grew even larger. It was inevitable that he'd one day decide to build his own major museum. Umpteen thousand came to the opening in 1972, including the Queen's cousin, Edward George Windsor, the Duke of Kent.
So now, after 20 years, it is no longer my museum, it is yours. By yours, I mean the motor industry and all those people who work in it and those who come and visit it.
Keeping the history of the motor car and motor racing alive and telling it afresh every day is something that no one can do in a more charming and informative manner than Stephen Vokens on his guided museum tour.
The National Motor Museum is the only museum in the world to have 4 land speed record cars on display. First Bluebird, 1925, 150 miles an hour. This Lotus 49 from 1967, it's the first of the modern Formula One cars. The chassis stops at this point, and from here on in, the engine is actually part of the chassis. Saves loads of weight and makes it much more agile. Before that, all cars were built like this, with an engine sitting inside the chassis, which is more weight, and so it's slower. This little caravan was made in 1955 for Prince Charles and Princess Anne when they were young children. They would have loved it, but I think they may have been confused by the sink and the cooker. I'm guessing, but I don't think they'd have known what to do with those.
Grand Prix dinosaurs, the first Ferraris and secretaries as radiator mascots. In the next edition, we'll be giving you a closer look at a couple of National Motor Museum gems.